It was cold, colder than anything she had ever felt. The wind bit through her skin like knives, and the sky above was black with smoke. War had stolen everything from her home, her family, even her name. All she had left was her little girl. A tiny hand clutched her torn dress. Eyes wide, lips turning blue. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. They hadn't felt warmth in even longer. She saw the humans arriving in the distance. Large machines landed with heavy thuds. Soldiers in dark armor stepped out. Scanning the ruins, they moved in silence. Checking for threats, she had heard of them humans. Cold creatures from a far world, but rumors whispered something else too. That some of them still had hearts. She waited until one soldier walked away from his team. He stood near a broken wall, staring into the snow. He looked strong, but tired. She wrapped her daughter in a piece of cloth and stepped out of the shadows. Her legs trembled with every step. She knew this might be the end. The soldier turned when he heard her. He pointed his weapon, eyes sharp. But when he saw her child, his hand lowered just slightly. "Please," she said in a weak voice. "One night." Just one. She reached for the blanket strapped to his side. "I will give you myself," she said. "Just take my daughter for the night." "Keep her warm." The soldier stared. She thought he didn't understand her language. But his eyes changed. He understood too well. There was a long silence. The girl coughed weakly. Snow fell quietly around them. The soldier looked left, then right. No one was watching. Slowly, he took off his blanket. But he didn't give it to the child. He reached forward and picked her up in his arms. The mother froze. Was he going to take her away? Was this a mistake? But then he looked at the woman and said, "Come with me." She didn't move. She couldn't believe it. "No," she said. "I only asked for." He cut her off. "I'm not taking payment," he said. "You both come with me." She followed. Not because she trusted him, but because she had no other choice. He led them through a hidden path. Past machines and metal walls, they entered a tent. Warm with glowing lights, she looked around. Eyes wide, it was so warm, it smelled like food. Her daughter was still in his arms, already falling asleep. He laid the child on a soft bed and turned to the mother. "You need food," he said. He gave her a packet strange, human food. She didn't ask questions. She ate it with shaking hands. The man's name was Raiden. He didn't speak much. But when he looked at the little girl, his eyes softened. He placed a heater near her and watched as her face relaxed in sleep. "I've seen too many die," he said quietly. "I won't let her be one more." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She had never expected kindness from a human. Not like this. She wanted to say thank you. But the words felt too small. Outside, a drone passed over the tent. Raiden stiffened and checked a screen. No alarms, not yet. But someone might have seen them. He turned to her. "You have to stay hidden," he said. "If they find out, I brought you here." He didn't finish the sentence. She nodded, understanding the danger. "Still," she said. "You should have left us." But he shook his head. "You didn't offer a deal," he said. "You reminded me who I am that night." She sat beside her daughter, watching her sleep in peace. It had been so long since she looked so calm, and though fear still lived in her chest, something else began to grow, hope, but far outside the camp. A red eye blinked in the snow. A small drone hovered silently, sending images to a distant screen. And on that screen, a commander leaned forward. A human soldier had taken in an alien. Two, actually. He smiled coldly and gave the order. "Mark him as traitor." Inside the tent, Raiden didn't know what was coming. But he had made his choice, and in the warmth of the tent, for the first time in days, the child whispered in her sleep, "Safe," and the mother finally closed her eyes. Not because she was free, but because someone had finally seen her. Not as a problem, but as a person, and that changed everything. The camp was quiet when they entered. To quiet, Raiden kept his voice low, his steps careful. He had broken every rule by bringing them in. If anyone saw them, it could mean prison or worse. But he didn't care anymore. The child was sleeping in his arms, her tiny head resting on his shoulder. The mother walked behind him, limping slightly, her eyes never still. She had never been inside a human war camp before. It was like a city of metal and fire. Soldiers passed in the distance. Machines moved crates. But they didn't see Raiden slip into his private tent. As soon as they were inside, he locked the door. "You're safe here for now," he said. The woman stood in the corner, watching him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Raiden didn't answer right away. Instead, he laid the child on a thin bed. She curled into the blanket without waking. "I've seen too many dead children," he said finally. "I couldn't leave yours behind." The woman didn't know what to say. She had expected cruelty, not kindness. Raiden opened a drawer and pulled out 2 ration packs. He handed one to her. "Eat," he said. She sat down slowly and opened the package. The food was dry, but it was food. She ate without speaking, eyes still on her daughter. Raiden sat across from her, removing parts of his armor. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Lyra, and your daughter?" Kayla. Raiden looked at the child. "She's different," he said. Lyra's body tensed. "What do you mean?" "She feels warm," he said. "Even when I touched her in the snow, she wasn't freezing like you." Lyra nodded slowly. "She was born like this." "Like what?" Special. Raiden raised an eyebrow. "She's not just a child," Lyra said. "She can feel things, see things." Raiden frowned. "See what?" "Pain," she whispered. "She can feel pain that isn't hers, and sometimes she can take it away." There was silence. Raiden looked again at the child, who now slept peacefully. "That's why we ran," Lyra said. "The government found out. They called her a threat. They said children like her would destroy balance." Raiden had heard stories, rumors of touched children born on destroyed worlds. Children who could change the world around them without weapons. He never believed those stories. Until now, suddenly, a soft hum filled the tent. Raiden turned sharply to the control panel. "Someone just scanned the area," he said. Lyra stood up, fear in her eyes. "Is it them?" "Could be a routine sweep," Raiden said, but he didn't sound sure. He grabbed a metal blanket and wrapped it around Kayla to block her heat signature. "Stay quiet, stay low," he said. Lyra crouched near the bed, holding her daughter. Raiden stepped out of the tent and looked around. The cold hit him like a wall. His eyes scanned the shadows. No one was near, but he felt it. They were being watched. Back inside, Lyra whispered to Kayla, "Don't make a sound," but Kayla's eyes were open now, glowing softly in the dark. Her skin shimmered like soft light. Lyra tried to cover her face, but it was too late. The glow was real. And someone outside had just seen it. Raiden rushed back in, his face pale. "A drone picked up something," he said. "I have to reset the power grid before they investigate." He paused when he saw the glow. Lyra held her child tighter. "I can't stop it," she said. "She does this when she's scared." Raiden knelt beside them. "She's going to get caught if we don't shut it down. Then what?" Lyra asked, "You think your people will protect her?" Raiden looked her in the eye. "No," he said, "I will." He opened a secret hatch beneath the floor. "Get inside." Lyra didn't move. "What is this?" "Old tech room," he said. "No cameras, no scans." She climbed down, holding Kayla. Raiden closed the hatch just as the door buzzed. A soldier's voice came through. "Captain Raiden, are you inside?" Raiden stood straight and replied, "Yeah, I'm here. Energy spike detected in your area," the voice said. "Everything all right?" Raiden smiled tightly. just a faulty heater. We'll run a scan anyway. Raiden nodded. Sure. Come on in. As the door opened, Kella's light faded underground, and Lyra covered her with the blanket. Raiden stood calm while two soldiers entered. They looked around but found nothing. Strange, one said. Maybe the sensor glitched. Maybe, Raiden replied. They left without checking the hatch after the door shut. Raiden reopened the floor and helped Lyra and Kayla out. We can't stay here, he said. They'll keep checking. Lyra nodded. Where will we go? Raiden looked out into the cold night. Someplace they won't follow. Behind him, the screen blinked again. A message appeared in red. Unit 5470, Captain Raiden, under watch. Unauthorized energy reading detected. Raiden didn't see it. But the walls were closing in, and the real danger hadn't even started yet. Raiden didn't sleep that night. He sat beside the small hatch. One hand resting on his blaster, the other held a cracked photo, his sister. Gone long ago, she had died in a refugee camp. No one had helped her. He had promised himself he would never walk away again. Now here he was, hiding two aliens in a human warbase. One of them, just a child, Kayla, a child who glowed like a star in the dark. A child who could feel pain that wasn't hers, and maybe, just maybe, take it away. He heard her breathing softly under the floor. She was finally asleep, but the base wasn't. Outside, engines rumbled, drones scanned the cold, and soldiers walked by like shadows. The command center had noticed the power spike from last night. And Raiden knew he didn't have much time. At dawn, he activated a small field communicator. He tapped in an old code one not used in years. It connected, static, buzzed. A voice came through, rough and angry. You better be dying. Ray, hi, Mason, Raiden said quietly. I need an exit. There was silence. Then laughter. Of course you do, Mason said. You always break the rules. Raiden didn't laugh. It's not for me. Another pause. You're with someone. Raiden's voice dropped lower. A mother and her child. The kid is different. What kind of different? The kind that can't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. Mason sighed. You're risking everything. I know. I'll need 2 hours, Mason said. After that, you're on your own. Raiden nodded. 2 hours is enough. He shut the comm and opened the hatch. Lyra and Kayla blinked up at him. It's time, he said. Lyra climbed out first. Her body stiff from the cramped space. Kayla looked pale but calm. Her small hand reached out to Raiden. He picked her up gently. They moved quietly through the base. Raiden knew every blind spot, every hidden path. He had trained here for years. Now he was using that training to escape it. They entered an old storage tunnel beneath the hangars. No cameras, no guards, just dust and silence. Raiden led them through until they reached a small locked door. He entered a code his own private emergency exit. The door opened to a wide, frozen valley. They stepped out into the cold. Snow crunched under their feet. Raiden wrapped the blanket tighter around Kayla. They had to move fast. Mason would meet them at the ridge. Suddenly, Kayla gasped. She held her head and cried out, "What's wrong?" Raiden asked, kneeling beside her. She's hurting, Lyra said, her voice shaking. Something is wrong. Kayla's hands glowed. And she pointed at the sky. Raiden looked up. A drone was above them, small. Black, silent. It hadn't made a sound, but Kayla had felt it coming. Raiden cursed and pulled out his blaster. He fired, but the drone was too fast. It zipped away, blinking red. Too late, he muttered. They saw us. Lyra clutched her daughter close. What now? We run, Raiden said. They sprinted across the snow, heading toward the hills. Behind them, an alarm blared back at the base. Raiden's comm beeped. Mason's voice shouted, "You've got Company 2 scout units inbound. "We'll make it," Raiden said. "You better," Mason replied, "because they're not coming to talk." Raiden picked up Kayla, and they ran faster. The cold wind tore at their faces. Snow flew into their eyes. Lyra stumbled, but kept going. The ridge was close. They could see the blinking lights of Mason's ship low. Hidden, ready. Then a sound filled the air. A high-pitched hum, too sharp, too fast. Raiden turned and saw two black crafts heading straight for them. He threw himself over Kayla just as a laser shot hit the snow near them. "Keep moving," he yelled. Lyra screamed and ducked behind a rock. Kayla's body began to glow again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else. Warmth spread out from her hands. The air shimmered around them. Raiden stared in shock as the next laser shot bent away, curved midair, and hit the ground behind them. "She's shielding us," he whispered. Lyra looked stunned. She's never done that before. Kayla opened her eyes. Golden and bright. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she said softly. Her voice was calm, too calm for a child in battle. Raiden stood and fired back, hitting one of the crafts. It spun and crashed into the snow. Flames bursting from its wing, the second ship stopped. Scanning the scene, Kayla raised her hand. The drone shook in the air, sparked, then exploded. Raiden stared at her. "What is she?" Lyra answered, her voice quiet. "Something the galaxy isn't ready for." Mason's ship opened its ramp. Raiden waved at Lyra. "Go now." They climbed aboard just as more alarms echoed in the valley. Inside, Mason looked them over and said, "You've really done it this time." Raiden didn't answer. He looked at Kayla, now asleep in his arms again. "She saved us," he said. Mason looked at the girl and frowned. "I hope you know what you're doing." Outside, more ships began to rise. But they were already in the air, already gone. Raiden looked down at the snowy valley and knew this was only the beginning. Asterisk, they found the resistance base hidden under a ring of old factories. The buildings were half broken, but inside, people moved with purpose. Raiden carried Kayla in his arms. Careful not to wake her, Lyra walked close behind, her face tight with fear and hope at the same time. They passed guards who glanced once and looked away. Their faces hard from too many losses, Mason led them to a low room lit by orange lamps. A group of fighters sat around a table covered with maps and old photos. Their leader was a woman with a scar across her brow. She studied Raiden like a judge. "We did not expect gifts today," she said dryly. Raiden set Kayla down on a cot and felt his legs tremble with relief. Lyra crouched beside her daughter and touched Kayla's hair gently. "You are safe now," she whispered, but her voice shook. The leader walked closer and looked at Kayla with open curiosity. "She has a rare aura," the leader said softly. "We have heard of such children," one of the fighters asked. "Are we hiding a weapon?" Raiden met the question with silence, his jaw tight. They stayed in the base for 2 nights, the first night filled with small comforts. Kayla slept and did not glow. She breathed like any child again. Raiden ate hot food and felt it warm him from the inside. Lyra finally smiled once, a small thing that broke and mended at once. But comfort is a short guest in war places. On the second day, Raiden tried to contact an old squadmate. He needed a safe route south and trusted only a few people with that kind of skill. He spoke in codes and waited. The line crackled with static. Mason listened while he worked, his hands folded, eyes on the wall. 2 hours, Raiden heard again, but this time the voice sounded different, strained. Unsure. Trust is a thread that wears thin under pressure. Raiden left Kayla sleeping and walked toward a back room to plan the escape. Lyra followed silently, her shoes whispering on concrete. She watched Raiden's back and thought of the man who picked her up in the snow. He was steady like a shelter, and she wanted to believe him with every small hope. they heard a shout from the front gates. Sudden and loud voices rose in alarm. Boots thundered, and the base's steel doors slammed. Raiden ran, Mason at his heels. And down the corridor came the sound of many boots. A group of soldiers spilled into the yard, their armor shining cold. Raiden's stomach dropped. These were not rebels, these were official. Someone in the crowd called his name with a hard tone. Raiden. You are under arrest for unauthorized harboring of alien subjects, the voice said. Mason swore and moved, trying to block the soldiers. But they were fast and many. Raiden stepped forward, hands open, trying to hold calm. Lyra stood frozen by the doorway, clutching Kayla. Fear making her hands small and tight. One soldier shoved Mason aside and pointed a gun at the cot where Kayla slept. Lyra stepped forward without thinking, a mother before all else. Do not touch her, she cried, voice raw. And the soldiers laughed like metal on stone. A tall officer with a clean uniform stepped in, his face smooth and cruel. He looked at Kayla as if she were a cracked glass artifact, not a child. You will come with us, the officer said to Lyra quietly, like a man reading an item from a list. Lyra trembled. And for a second, Raiden thought she might run. But then a soldier grabbed her arm and twisted it. Pain flared across her face. No, she said. My child, the word broke through like a struck bell. The officer's eyes did not change. He signed to two soldiers. And they led Lyra away. Raiden lunged forward, every rule and caution burning behind his ribs. Let her go, he demanded. Voice louder than he planned. The officer turned, eyes cutting like glass. Captain Raiden. Step back, he said, calm as winter. Raiden felt the room spin. The maps on the table blurred, and the leader watched with a tight mouth. Mason grabbed Raiden's sleeve, urging him down, whispering, It's a trap. Raiden had trained for cruel things. He knew the sound of a trap. He smelled it like oil and old blood, but Lyra's face, as they walked her out, was burned into his mind. And the choice spread before him like two paths through ice. If he rushed the soldiers, they would fire and likely kill the child to make a point. If he stayed, Lyra would be taken to the command ship, broken and used as an example, and Kayla would be watched and hunted. He heard Kayla stir behind him, and a small whimper slipped into the air. Raiden? Lyra cried back once, her voice small but full. Save her. Please, the officer's hand lifted as if to silence the world. And the soldiers moved Lyra through the gate. The crowd making space like the sea around a stone. Raiden felt himself pulled in every direction. His body a puppet of his vows, and his heart, Mason's eyes pleaded, Think, Ray. We can still move the girl. Raiden had always believed one life could change many, yet here the choice was ugly and raw. He closed his eyes and made a sound like a broken thing, the plan in his head collapsing under the weight of Lyra's pain. Then he heard the command officer speak into a small device, voice low. Detain them all and bring Captain Raiden in alive. Raiden's world narrowed to a single breath. And he knew the next step would decide more than one life. Raiden didn't speak for a long time after they took Lyra. The resistance base became a silent shell. No one looked him in the eye. Even Mason avoided his gaze. Kayla sat on the cot, her knees pulled to her chest, her glow completely gone. She hadn't spoken since her mother left. Raiden sat across from her, elbows on his knees. He had chosen to save Kayla, but it didn't feel like a victory. His mind replayed Lyra's last words again and again. Save her, please, he had, but at what cost? Outside, snow had started to fall again. The world looked peaceful. But the storm inside him kept building. He was trained to follow orders. But no training could explain what Kayla was. Not a weapon, not a child soldier, just different. And now she was quiet as a ghost. He tried to speak to her tuna bar. He asked softly, offering her a ration pack. She shook her head. He forced a small smile. I hated these two. Still no answer. Then she whispered, "She's not coming back." Raiden froze. Kayla wasn't crying. Her voice was flat. "She's not my mother anymore." Raiden leaned forward, confused. "What do you mean?" Kayla finally looked up. They changed her. Her eyes filled with something that wasn't fear, but something deeper. Recognition. Raiden knew about reconditioning. It was a secret used in the deeper military branches. They didn't kill important prisoners. They erased them and reprogrammed their minds. Turned allies into weapons. He stood quickly. The cot creaked behind him. "I have to get her back," he said. Mason, standing near the door, shook his head slowly. "You won't make it past the first checkpoint." Raiden glared at him. "Then help me." Mason looked at Kayla, then back at Raiden. "You think she'll still remember you?" "I don't care," Raiden said. "I've promised her she'd be safe." Later that night, Mason opened an old map on the table. "This is where they took her," he said, pointing to a facility built into a mountain. "High-level research station." Raiden leaned over the map. "That's where they're holding her." Mason nodded, and possibly turning her into something else. Kayla walked over slowly. She touched the map with her glowing finger. "That place is full of pain," she whispered. Raiden looked at her carefully. "Can you feel her?" She nodded once. "She's still there, but not the same." That was enough. Raiden packed only what he needed: stealth armor, a plasma pistol, and a comlink. Mason handed him a knife and said, "You'll only get one chance." Raiden gave a nod of thanks. Then turned to Kayla. "You're staying here." But Kayla frowned. "I have to come." Raiden stood firm. "It's too dangerous." Kayla's eyes glowed brighter. "She'll know me, even if they change everything." Raiden hesitated. Deep down, he knew Kayla was right. She was the key, not a weapon, but a connection. He sighed and knelt to her level. "You stay close." She nodded and took his hand. 2 nights later, they reached the mountain facility. It was buried under ice and steel. The front gates were guarded by drones and tower cannons. But Mason had given them a different path, an old sewage duct that led into the lower tunnels. They crawled through darkness, the cold biting into their bones. Raiden kept glancing back to check on Kayla. She didn't complain once. Inside, the facility smelled like metal and medicine. Bright lights hummed above and machines beeped in the walls. They moved through the shadows. Avoiding cameras, Kayla suddenly pulled his hand. "She's close," she whispered. Raiden followed her down a side corridor marked Psych Evil Unit. They found her behind a glass wall. Lyra sat in a chair, dressed in white, her eyes blank. She stared forward, unmoving. Raiden's heart sank. The woman he had saved, the mother who had fought for her child, she was gone. He tapped on the glass. "Lyra," he called. No response. Kayla stepped forward and placed her hand on the glass. A soft golden light spread from her palm. Lyra blinked once, then again. Her head tilted slightly. Raiden held his breath. "Come on," he whispered. Lyra stood slowly. Her eyes met Kayla's. Then she whispered something they couldn't hear. A loud alarm blared. Security had spotted them. Red lights flashed. Footsteps thundered. Raiden pulled Kayla back. "Can you break the door?" he asked. Kayla's hands glowed bright, and the glass began to crack. Lyra raised her hand on the other side and pressed her palm to Kayla's. The light doubled, then the glass shattered outward in a flash of warmth. Lyra stumbled forward, catching herself on the edge. She looked at Kayla, her mouth trembling. "My baby," she whispered. Kayla threw her arms around her. Raiden grabbed them both. "We're not done yet," he said. The hallway behind them filled with soldiers. Raiden raised his blaster. Lyra stepped beside him and said, "Let me try." She raised her hand, and this time the glow came from both mother and daughter. Raiden felt the air shift as the soldiers froze in place. Not dead, but stunned, caught in a wave of memory and emotion. Kayla and Lyra were not weapons. They were reminders of pain, of loss, and of something rare in war love. Raiden smiled as they ran. This mission was no longer about escape. It was about awakening something the enemy never expected. Hope asterisk, they didn't stop running until the mountain was far behind them. Snow whipped through the air like knives. But none of them complained. Raiden led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon. Kayla held tightly to her mother's hand, and Lyra. She moved like a shadow, silent but different now, not broken, not whole, something in between. They found a small cave hidden beneath old ice. Raiden checked it for sensors, then lit a heat flare inside. The warmth made the silence louder. Kayla curled into her mother's lap and fell asleep almost instantly. Raiden sat across from them, his blaster resting on his knee. He studied Lyra carefully. She didn't meet his eyes. She stroked Kayla's hair slowly. But her face remained still. "You remember me?" Raiden asked softly. A long pause. "I remember pieces," Lyra said finally. "But there are holes." Raiden nodded. "They tried to erase you. They tried to remake me," she whispered. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. "They gave me lies and called them memories." Raiden said nothing. He had heard stories of mind reprogramming, but hearing it from her was different. "I almost believed them," Lyra said. "They said Kayla was dangerous, that she would cause a war." She looked down at her sleeping child, "But when she touched me, ... I saw everything." Raiden leaned forward. "What did you see?" Lyra closed her eyes. "I saw the day I offered her for a blanket." Her lips trembled. "I saw you pick her up instead." A tear slid down her cheek. "And I remembered what it meant to be a mother." Raiden felt a lump in his throat. "She saved you," he said. "No," Lyra whispered. "You both did." Outside, a storm began to build. Wind screamed across the cliffs. Raiden checked the communicator Mason had given him. Static. He smacked it twice. Still static. They were alone. Raiden didn't mind. He preferred it that way. But Kayla needed more than caves and hiding. They needed a place to start over, somewhere no one would hunt them. "She's changing," Lyra said suddenly. Raiden looked up. "How?" "She glows more often, even when she's not afraid." Raiden raised a brow. "Is that bad?" "I don't think so," Lyra said. "But it's spreading." As if on cue, Kayla stirred. Her small hands moved in her sleep, and a soft light spread across the cave walls. Tiny glowing patterns danced along the stone, like stars moving in slow waves. Raiden stood slowly. "What is she doing?" Lyra looked around in awe. "She's dreaming." Raiden watched as the light pulsed once, then faded. "She's not just gifted," he said. "She's evolving." But the peace didn't last long. Early the next morning, Kayla woke in tears. "They're coming," she said. Raiden was already on his feet, grabbing his gear. "Who?" Kayla shook her head. "I don't know. But it's not soldiers." Lyra touched the cave wall. Her face turned pale. "I feel them too." Raiden loaded his weapon and narrowed his eyes. "Talk to me, hunters," Lyra said quietly. "Not from your side. Not from mine." Raiden's grip tightened. "So who are they?" "Worse," Lyra whispered. "They work in shadows. They take what others fear." Raiden opened the communicator again. "Still dead. Looks like we're on our own." They moved quickly. Covering Kayla in a thermal cloak, the storm had passed. But the sky looked wrong, clouds forming strange circles. Raiden had seen this once before. During a failed mission on another world, it meant cloaked ships. Invisible eyes. Lyra stopped suddenly, her hand trembling. There near, Raiden looked around empty snow. Silence, wind, Then something moved in the corner of his eye. A shimmer like heat over ice. Kayla stepped forward before Raiden could grab her. She raised her hand, and a beam of warm light shot forward. It hit the air. Something unseen screamed. A shadow appeared, tall and thin, with glassy skin and no face. Raiden fired. But the thing didn't fall. Lyra pulled Kayla back. They can't be killed with guns. Then how? Raiden yelled. Kayla raised both hands this time, her body glowing like fire. The shadow twisted and screamed again. Then it vanished. More came. 5, maybe 6. Raiden stood in front of the girls, ready to die if he had to, but Kayla stepped beside him. "She's not scared anymore," Lyra said, her voice firm. Kayla looked at the shadows and whispered, "Go away." The light around her burst outward like a wave. The shadows screamed and vanished one by one. Until the snow was still again, Raiden dropped his blaster in shock. Lyra hugged her daughter tightly. "You did it," she whispered. Kayla nodded, her glow soft now. "They weren't alive," she said. "They were fear." Raiden knelt beside her. "What do you mean?" "They came from pain and fear," Kayla said. "They grow when people give up." Raiden looked at the sky. And for the first time, he understood Kayla wasn't just healing wounds. She was healing worlds. He turned to Lyra. "She's more than a child now." Lyra nodded. "She's a beginning, and somewhere far away, someone else was watching. Not a soldier, not a hunter, a leader." He stared at the screen and whispered to his advisor. "She's active." The advisor nodded. "Should we engage?" The leader shook his head. "No," he said. "Let them think they're free." And just like that, Part 6 faded into the snow, but the storm was far from over. Asterisk, the road to freedom was never straight. Even after the shadows were gone, Raiden knew they weren't safe yet. Something had shifted in the world. Keela's powers had grown. And so had the attention drawn to her. The snow had stopped falling. But the cold still lingered. And in that silence, the truth began to settle in. They camped for the night near an abandoned tower. Raiden checked for sensors and traps while Lyra gathered old fuel cells for warmth. Kayla sat on a rock, staring up at the stars. Her eyes glowed faintly, but there was peace in her face now. Not fear, not pains, just quiet. Raiden sat beside her, the fire crackling between them. "You've changed," he said softly. Kayla nodded. "I had to." "Are you scared?" he asked. Kayla looked at him with gentle eyes. "No," she said, "but I know someone is still watching." Raiden tensed. "You feel them?" Kayla nodded again, far away, but close enough to matter. Lyra joined them, wrapping a blanket around Kayla's shoulders. "We're almost to the extraction point," she said. "There's a human outpost to clicks west." One of Mason's old contacts. Raiden gave a tired smile. Finally, but deep down, he knew it wouldn't end there. Kayla wasn't just someone to protect anymore. She was something larger, a light the dark would always try to swallow. As they approached the outpost the next morning, they saw it, a small dome-shaped structure hidden beneath ice and rock. It blinked once, scanned them, and opened its doors. Inside stood a woman in a white coat with silver hair and sharp eyes. "You're Raiden," she said, not asking. "Yes," he replied. "And this is the girl." Kayla stepped forward without hiding. The woman smiled faintly. "I've been waiting." They entered the outpost clean halls. Quiet machines and warm lights. It felt more like a sanctuary than a military base. But Raiden still didn't relax. Lyra walked beside him, holding Kayla's hand tightly. In a large room filled with holograms, the silver-haired woman spoke. "My name is Dr. Anya Roan," she said. "I study signals, motional frequencies that shape space." Raiden raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you call what she does?" Dr. Roan nodded. She emits memory waves, raw emotional energy that can rewrite trauma. Lyra frowned. Why her? Dr. Roan walked slowly to a console. Because she's not the first, that made Raiden stiffen. What? There were others, she said, born on broken worlds, gifted. But none survived long enough to grow. Kayla stood very still. But I did, she said softly. Dr. Roan looked at her kindly. Yes. You did. Raiden didn't like the look in her eyes. It was the same look soldiers had before launching missiles. Why did you wait for us? He asked sharply. Dr. Roan turned to him. Because she's ready. Alarms suddenly flashed across the walls. The base lights dimmed and red symbols danced across the ceiling. Raiden grabbed Kayla and pulled her behind him. Lyra reached for her weapon. What is this? She demanded. Dr. Roan remained calm. They followed you here, she said. Raiden cursed. You said this place was hidden? It was, Roan replied. Until she lit up the sky, the door burst open, and soldiers stormed in. Not rebels. Not official army. These ones wore no insignia. Just black armor and dead eyes. Private contractors, Raiden muttered. They're here for the girl, Roan said, but they'll have to go through us. Kayla stepped forward. No, she said. Raiden tried to pull her back. But she stood firm, glowing brighter than ever. I don't want more fighting. She raised her hands and the walls pulsed. Light flowed from her like a wave of warmth. The soldiers froze mid-step, blinking rapidly. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees. One of them began to cry. Another whispered a name like it had just returned to him after years. Raiden stared in awe as Kayla walked toward them slowly. They didn't stop her. They only watched. Kayla turned to Raiden and Lyra. I can show them, she said. Show them what we've forgotten. Raiden finally understood. She wasn't just healing bodies or minds. She was healing time, restoring what war had buried. Dr. Roan watched silently, tears in her eyes. You're more than anyone imagined, she whispered. Kayla looked at her. I'm just doing what I was born to do after the wave passed. Silence fell over the base. No gunfire, no shouting. Only breathing, calm and real. The soldiers lowered their heads and walked out without orders. No one stopped them. Later that night, as stars filled the sky, Raiden stood on the edge of a cliff, Kayla beside him. You don't have to keep running, he said. Kayla looked up. I don't want to hide. Lyra joined them, wrapping her arms around her daughter. So what now? She asked. Raiden smiled softly. We go home. Kayla looked at Earth, now shining bright above them. Home, she repeated. And this time, the word didn't mean safety. It meant beginning, a world not yet perfect, but ready to change because one human didn't take a child for a blanket. He took them home instead, and that kindness, on one cold night, became the spark that warmed the stars.